Hello, I'm going to show you how documentation works inside Wherescape Red. So now Wherescape Red is used to create your workflows and your objects for your data warehouse, like load tables, stage tables, and facts and dimensions. Now, while you're building all of these in Wherescape Red, it's capturing all of that information, the data lineage, the transformations, everything like that. It's capturing it in metadata. Because it's already in the metadata, we have a self-documenting feature in Wherescape, so you can just push a button and create that documentation on how the data warehouse is built. So now let me start off by telling you how you can add business value to that technical documentation that Wherescape knows. And so if we go into, say, this fact table, you can add things like a description. So when you create an object, you can just paste in a very simple description or something more complex if you need to. You can put a purpose. What is the purpose of this? To hold orders information. We can look at a grain and we can look at examples. You can put all of this in with just a cut and a paste into it when you're creating user level documentation. Maybe you want to even put what it's used for in the following Power BI dashboards. You can even include notes such as this was put into production in Sprint 1. So now once you have all that information done, Wherescape has two ways to create that documentation. You can do it via command line interface in a script when you do deployments to production or test or development even. You can create that documentation, or you can create it on demand anytime you want inside the tool. So we can just come up here and click create documentation. Now I can create just the project I'm working on or the group, the sprint, or I can create them on all objects in the data warehouse. Now you select the folder it's going to create it in. Now this is HTML. You have some options if you want to replace the style sheets and put your own logos in there. You can do that as well. Give it a title. And when it's done creating the documentation, we can come in and display that documentation inside. Now, this is, like I said, HTML. We create two kinds of documentation. We create user documentation and technical documentation. Now, the user documentation, if we drill into that presentation star schema and look at that fact table that we just looked at, we can see that this is the description and the purpose and the grain, and we also have a business name and the column name and whether it's a measure and any comments. And we can see here it looks like maybe there was a transformation done at an earlier stage for this order value. We can also see a star schema here, and we can come down and see the things like the examples we put in there and the usage, what Power BI dashboards this is used for. We also create technical documentation. And let me show you that. We also have a glossary before I go to the technical documentation. This glossary has every single column in the data warehouse listed, a comment that you can see. You can even load these comments via a spreadsheet if you need to. And if we look down at that order value, we can see that comment, that price times quantity. Now, if we go to the technical documentation, go to that same presentation layer and look at our fact table, we can see here is those same descriptions and the purpose and the grain, but we also include things such as the host script to load this fact table. The actual Python script is in here. We can then also see other related dimensions. Here is the columns with the display name and the column name, just like in the user, but it also includes in the technical side the data type, default values, the source table, the source column. Is it a business key? Any transformations that were done, we include that same star schema, but we also include a trackback diagram. How did the data get into this fact table? Through a stage table, through a couple of load tables. So all of this shows up And if you have extended properties, like you're doing incremental loads or something like that, if you do aggregates or hierarchies, and included in the technical documentation are the notes. This table was put into production in Sprint 1. So now if we look, we can see that it is related to a stage table here. So we can click on this and find that stage table that it's related to. And if we scroll down, we can see that same information, that it came from load tables, and it has a track bag diagram. It's just the stage table from the two load tables. And then you also see that order value. What was that transformation that we saw come across in the business definition? And we see it came from unit price times quantity from the load tables. So now that's the documentation for Wherescape Red. And more information, please go to wherescape.com/request the demo.